stories. No, not today. Sure, we go way back. Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, it's so wonderful to see all of you here today. And I just, before I launch, just want to make a special thanks to Vision for having me here, because this is the third of 3 talks that I've been doing. And it's been really, truly wonderful, and thank you for the flowers, and I appreciate that so much. I said to you the first week, this is the love space, so thank you. I appreciate being able to speak into it. And Reverend Patty left me with a beautiful theme, which is looking through the eyes of God. And I'm so grateful for that theme, because it has led me to some wonderful places and has been the reminder to look with the eyes of God. It's really hard to get a theme that you don't like as a speaker who goes around. But I've been speaking into that theme for Patty these last couple of weeks. And what we're seeking to do is, in fact, to look with the eyes of God and really open up our spiritual seeing so that we see what it is we understand Spirit sees. And it's first of all to see ourselves that way. There's a beautiful song that's been written from a Rumi poem, and it says, "Open your hidden eyes, you are the seal on a treasure, and you're a diamond mine." Open your hidden eyes, you are the seal on a treasure, and you're a diamond mine. And that's the truth. That we are treasures of talents and skills and abilities and sensitivities and sensibilities and contributions that we can make. And we have to open up our eyes to see that. And if we're looking with the eyes of God, that's what we see about ourselves. And then we want to see our pathway or our lives as an unfolding experience of good, because God and good are synonymous. And Ernest Holmes had really touched into that, and the man touched into that, and somebody had a quotation. Sorry, I'm a little delirious, and I'll explain to you why. Is that the soul is on a pathway of experience, and we're here gathering the experience that is necessary to our awakening and our advancement. And that is only good with a capital G. And so the call for us is to open up our spiritual seeing, to bring our spiritual sense of things to every single part of ourself and every single part of our life. That's how heaven comes to earth, by the way. That heaven comes to earth when our perception, our spiritual perception opens, and we apply that into our life experience. It's to open up and see everything in that way. And it is to understand that even while there are plenty of not good things that take place, the good, that is the capital G good, is the fabric of existence and is the backdrop against which the whole human drama takes place. And it's a choice for each one of us, what are we going to focus on? Because whatever we focus on, that's what we're going to bring more into our particular life experience. So we're knowing that what we look from, we look with, and we look at. What we look from, we look with, and we look at. And so even though we think that there's an it out there, it's really just what we're looking from and looking with that determines what it is that we see. And that means that we have a tremendous amount of influence over our perceptions. We have a tremendous amount of influence. And it also means that whatever we see, it's really only our own thoughts. And we don't tell the truth about that very well. And science of mind is a self-responsibility study. We take responsibility for ourselves and for our consciousness. And so it occurred to me that one of the most honest and self-responsible things we could say when we're in a relationship is, on the days when we're seeing with the eyes of love, to say, "I really love my perception of you today." I'm really loving my perception of you today. And on those other kinds of days, to say, my perception of you is really messed up. I better go talk to a practitioner. And that's the choice for us about everything. Do we see from the love that is the truth of us, or do we see from the fear and judgment that is the untruth of us? And that's really how it goes, because we see things not as they are, we see them as we are. And I just don't know any way to get around that. It just is, I think, the truth. And we can bond together with other people who see things the way we do, but that doesn't mean there's any more of an it out there. You know, it just means that we've come into agreement about our perceptions. So we've been talking over these last couple of weeks about the journey of our lives, both the outer journey as the sequence of, you know, events, moving from here to there, accomplishing things, doing all the, you know, our history, all the things that we do, and then acknowledging that there's this journey that winds under that outer sequence that is more about our transformation and our awakening. And I found myself speaking about the inner journey the other day in a teaching that I have been teaching for at least 15 years, and it'll be familiar to some of you. And I found myself saying something that I had never said before. It surprised me. It was a little opening in my awareness. And the teaching is called The Kingdoms of Consciousness, or Michael Beckwith teaches it as the stages of spiritual growth and development. And I'm actually starting to think of it as the sequence of rooms of consciousness. And so I just want to touch into it so I can get to the part where I tell you what surprised me. And the idea here is that we begin in the first room of consciousness, which is really much more like a room of unconsciousness. And it's the place that we are when the spiritual self in us has not awakened yet. And so we live life not really as a consciously creative experience, because we haven't really learned about the creative power of thought, or started to harness that in a real way. We are living more as a reaction. We're living out of the reactiveness of our emotions and the reactiveness of our false beliefs. We're living life as a reaction. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Okay, you have a sense of that. And when we're living life mainly as a reaction, we're ever so happy to call all kinds of other people into our lives that also live life as a reaction, and we create a little bit of hell on earth a lot of times, right? Because we're just reacting to each other all the time. And the wonderful thing about that is, first of all, we sort of begin there, and there comes a day when the pain of that living reactively, which is also the experience of being at the effect of life, like life is doing it to us, we call that victimhood. The good thing about it is that there comes a day when the pain reaches an intolerable level for us, and we wake up. And we say, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to do that again. And we, right, you're all nodding your head, you know this, yes. And we begin a search. And many of us enter a religious science church, a center for spiritual living, in this state, requesting for something more. We're wanting a deeper truth about ourselves. We're wanting to know more about life. We're wanting to come closer to the experience of God. And so to move out of that first room of consciousness, we have to give up blame. We have to give up blame. We have to stop holding people, places, and things outside of us as responsible for our circumstances. And the great thing that we're blaming these days is the economy. And this is not an economical talk, so I'm not going to say any more about that. But there's a time when we must give up blaming other things for our circumstances and situations, as real as that feels. And I myself have mentioned it, the economy. We start to move into another room of consciousness where we take responsibility for our thoughts. Because mind is the fashioning factor, and what we think is what we're going to get. And so we learn how to think creatively and newly, and we accept a greater experience for ourselves, and we start rebuilding our lives. And we build. And we bring forth improved conditions, whatever that might be. And that's really as far as Science of Mind used to take us, but we know that there are two more places to go, two more rooms in consciousness. And after a while of getting our household, so to speak, in order, our attention begins to shift. It begins to shift away from what we're building, and we start seeing how Spirit is using what we have built for its expression. In other words, we start focusing on how we can serve and how we can contribute and how we can use ourselves and use our life for a greater expression of good. Does this make sense to you? And so we open up into being the instrument or the vehicle or the vessel through which Spirit is expressing. And to get into that third room of consciousness, we have to give up control. Oh, we hate that. We have to give up control. We surrender. Surrender, say that word? Surrender. Into the way in which Spirit wants to use us. And I would say as a whole, especially all of us in Centers for Spiritual Living, we at least have a toe, if not a foot, in the third domain, in the third room of consciousness. Because we talk a lot about, even though we have tendrils that reach back into the other domains, we talk a lot about how can we serve, how can I contribute, how do I help make the world a better place to be. So we're the third room. It's the fourth room where I said something surprising. And as I've taught this fourth kingdom of consciousness in the past, I've always said this is a little bit hard to talk about. Because what the fourth room of consciousness is when you give up any shred of separation between you and God, and you just come into a full sense of your divine identity. It's like, wham, I'm there. And those quotations that you read, Nan, were perfect for that. It's this full realization that that which spirit is, I am. We start with it as a concept, but there comes a day when suddenly a veil drops in our awareness and we go, oh my God, I get it. And so I was teaching this the other day in an Emma Curtis Hopkins class, and I heard myself say for the first time, the truth is we're already there. The truth is we are already in the fourth room of consciousness. It's just we haven't realized it yet. Because you already are the incarnation of spirit. You already are that. You already are that. Take a breath. So will I. And if we were looking with the eyes of God, that's what we would see. If we could really see ourselves with the eyes of God, all we would see is our spiritual reality in human form. So put up your arms in a big V. It's time for a stretch anyway. And bring your hands down, keeping that V right to the center of your being. Right at that point, that's our teaching symbol, is where spirit becomes you. And that's the truth of who you are. You may relax. And so even though we talk about the journey of life, and I have a sense of journeying too, outwardly and inwardly, the truth is we're already home. You are already home. In fact, you are already here. There is no other here than here. And you might, this moment, bring your mind from the past or the future and come here. All of you, here. There is no other here. Here is here, and you're here. And you're already whole. You are already whole. The wholeness of spirit has become form in you. There is no wholeness to go get somewhere. There is no wholeness store. You can't purchase it. You can realize it. You're already whole. Nothing broken, nothing missing. You are the God seed. You contain already everything in you that you need for the fullest expression. If you were a rose seed, you would contain in you the fully blossomed rose. If you were an acorn, you would be containing the oak tree. You are the God seed, and you contain? All right. And so you're already home. Already here, already whole, already home. There is no deeper place to go in God than where you already are. Thanks. Go to coffee now. So I invite you to feel that and just breathe it in. And please say with me, I'm already here.
I'm already here.
I'm already whole.
I'm already whole.
I'm already home.
I'm already home.
You're already home. There is no other place to be. So, if we're going to have a sense of life as a journey, then I would say that the truest thing would be not a journey to God, or even a journey in God. It's a journey as God. It's a journey as God. And all we can do is to practice the concept of that and seek to feel it. And there comes a day when a veil drops and you get it. And it's not a different place. It's the opening of realization about the place that you've always been. Because you're already here, you're already whole, and you're already home. You know, Emma Curtis Hopkins has this wonderful prayer poem. She's speaking to her soul, and I'm going to do it. Let's see if I've memorized it now after 20 years. Oh, wonderful me, beautiful me, influential me, enchanting and immortal wisdom. Rise up, my soul, and heal the sick wherever I walk. Show people how to be strong. Make people love God. Show me the finished kingdom through which I walk. Show me the words that make the world glad and sane. And it's that line that I read at least 20 years ago, show me the finished kingdom through which I walk, that became a prayer for me. And in this, she's speaking to her soul. She's actually demanding, because it's like she's got all kinds of exclamation points if you read this in print. She's demanding that the truth in her show her the spiritual reality. Show me the finished kingdom through which I walk. And I love that idea, and the idea is that this creation of God has already been made. The creation is done, it is finished, and God called it good. And so it is. And it's our opportunity for us to open up our eyes to see that reality. Now again, that doesn't mean that there aren't all kinds of not good things that happen. We don't pretend that the small not good, small g not good, isn't happening. We were talking about Aurora last week, so we know full well that not good things happen. But that is an absence of good, not a presence of not good. Thanks, Rose. And it is to let that awareness open for us so that we can start seeing this reality, this fabric of existence, this backdrop against which the human drama takes place. Because God's creation has been made and it is good. We're the only ones that muck it up a little bit. And yet that perception of good is still the true perception within us, and the more that we see that, the more we become the vehicle through which that expresses. If God's creation has been made, the finished kingdom is done, I just want you to know that you're part of the finishedness of the finished kingdom. And that doesn't mean that you don't have a sense of unfolding and awakening in your life, but it's not about being different, it's about being the fullest expression of who you already are. It's just about being the full blossoming of that. And it's about seeing the wholeness and the goodness that is the truth of you. So I did something, I was flying home yesterday, and I did something that I often do. I said, okay, Spirit, what do you want them to know? And that's a great thing to do, and it's usually a really humorous kind of statement that comes through. And so what Spirit said, tell them they're here to have a good time.
Will do.
What a concept. Tell them they're here to have a good time. In other words, they're here to have an experience of good with a capital G. And Ernest Holmes has this lovely statement somewhere in the textbook. He makes mention of the universe lies stretched in smiling repose. And so I have a vision of a very feminine body, spangled in stars, relaxing, on the cosmic divan. And she's looking down at Earth and she's saying, wow, look how stressed out they are. It's like, oh, that's so sad, because they don't have to do it that way. Oh, well, they'll come to it someday. And then she closes her eyes and has a nap. The universe lies stretched in smiling repose, and here we are with all of the stuff that we go through. And yet if we were seeing with the eyes of God, if we were really seeing, if we were looking from the consciousness of God and looking with the consciousness of God, we would be seeing the good that is there. And so I want to share just personally for a minute. I didn't easily come to a realization of life as good. And the first time I really had a realization of the perfection of life was when my son Ian was born. And that was just 33 years ago. And it was at the moment, because had been afraid during the pregnancy, like, I think I thought that the not good that I was going to affect him. And suddenly when he came out to be this perfect, full-term, beautiful child, I just went, oh, life is perfect. And of course I remind him of this every time. I call him up on the phone wherever he is, and I say, Ian, when you were born, for the first time, I knew that life was good. And for the first time, I knew that something good could come from me. That's even the deeper thing. So I had a realization of good. You know, and there's a principle that when we have a realization, we will have a revelation. Well, I've just come from the revelation. And Ian and his wife Jamie just had twins. And there's a miracle story to it which I want to share with you. Is that okay? It'll take just a little bit of time. So the story begins, first of all, my daughter-in-law Jamie is from Iowa. Very sophisticated girl, but definitely filled with Midwest dreams of family and the whole thing. And they had a beautiful wedding, and then, you know, family was next. Jamie was pregnant, she had a miscarriage, and in the middle of the miscarriage, they discovered that she had cancer. And so it was an angel baby that came, because if she had not been pregnant, it would not have been discovered. And so that in itself was completely devastating. And a surgery was scheduled. I'm trying not to be anatomical because it is Sunday morning. A very complete, total surgery was scheduled that would, of course, render her unable to have a child. And before the surgery took place, embryos were created. So actually 2 years ago, I was already a grandmother. They just had no faces and they were really cold. So after the fear of the, you know, all of that surgery and treatment, you know, here are these little embryos in the deep freeze. And they began to investigate what we call surrogacy, but it's really just gestational carrying. Because when the genetic material belongs to a couple, it's a gestational carrier that they line up. So that's a very legal term, important. And they started investigating it, and it was expensive and scary because they didn't know who the person would be. And suddenly, a family friend offered to be the gestational carrier. A wonderful woman named Stacy, very Christian young woman, she's 37, blonde. I didn't know what I expected when I met her, but she's blonde, thin, and vegetarian, and does yoga all the time. And that's not what I expected. Has 3 children of her own, a husband who's in med school, family friend, and she offered to be the gestational carrier, which is just incredible. And so implantation happens, the 2 strongest embryos were selected, and it turned out to be a boy and a girl. And every step along the way, things have been good, and the babies were born last Tuesday. And so when you realize good, it reveals. You know, and I really had to do some of my own personal work early on in the process to be big and brave about it and say, you know, I've had my own children, it's okay, you know, if this never happens with them, because my daughter could still have kids. But I want to say that that when we have a realization of good, there's a revelation of good, a showing up in the world. And in Iowa, where the birth took place, this kind of unusual birth is a really big story. We're used to all kinds of things out here in California, but in Iowa they are not. And so people from the hospital came to interview Jamie and Ian and Stacy and her husband, Brian, because they wanted to do a feature for the hospital newsletter. And in the speaking about it, Brian, the husband, just made mention of doors opening. He said all we did was walk through an open door when it was there, and then walk through the next door, and then walk through the next door. And so I started thinking about doors. And there's a beautiful teaching in the book of Revelation that says, I have set before thee an open door that no man can shut. I have set before thee an open door that no man can shut. And what that means is that there is nothing that blocks you from a deepening realization of good. There is nothing that blocks you from a deepening realization of good. There is nothing that locks you out from a full realization of the good of life. Nothing. And everything that has taken place in your life, no matter how difficult, is a doorway into that deeper realization. So if you have a scar on the physical, mental, or emotional level, that scar is a door. If you have a wound in your psyche or in your life experience, that wound is a door into a deeper experience. If you have a really important story that's been important to you in your life, that story is a door. Your deep dreams are doors into an ongoing and deepening realization of good. And there is nothing that keeps you from walking through the doorway. Any difficulty that you have overcome, whatever it might be, all of that is not a block, it's a door. There's a very famous painting by a man named William Hunt. You've probably seen it before. It looks a little schmaltzy, actually. But it was exhibited, when it was exhibited in London for the first time, the critics came out to see it. And they had a few things to say. It's a painting of Jesus standing at a door. And it looks like he's been standing at the door for a really long time, because the door is weathered and tattered and the weeds have grown up around it. And there's a knocker on the door, and Jesus has his hand on the knocker. And so the critics thought Jesus looked pretty good, and they liked the whole concept. But what they said was, but you have something missing. You know, critics like to find what's missing. You have something missing, it's the door handle. And William Hunt, because there was no door handle, and William Hunt smiled and said, the door opens in. And so the doorway represents an opening into our own hearts. Jesus, the man in the painting, represents Christ, the consciousness that we talk about. And the Christ consciousness is the full realization of God as you. Christ consciousness is God as me. That is it. And so the idea here is the door swings in. And it's the opportunity for each one of us to let that realization in, into our hearts, into our bodies, into our minds, into every single aspect of us. To open the door, because the knocking is happening. Open the door and let the realization in. And so just to come to a conclusion here. And by the way, John's going to try to post pictures of a little photo of the babies, Hannah and Carson, so you can see them. They're so beautiful, but of course I would say that, but they really are. Just to conclude, it's about continuing to open to the truth that is already so about you. You do not have to go anywhere to be more here. You do not have to achieve something to be more whole. There's just the wholeness that you are to express. And you don't have to do anything to be more home. It is to realize it, and to feel it, and to practice it, to look out. This is a great city, to be able to see the goodness of God, practice seeing that the creation has already been made, that the finished kingdom is at hand, that you are a beautiful and perfect piece of it. And just go about your journeying and your sense of life as you have it. But don't forget to say, I'm already here, I'm already whole, and I'm already home. Thanks so much.